My name is Herman Jeong, Jeong Hon Ming.
And Herman, how long have you been a member of Cathay Post?
Since 1957.
Okay. You were born in China.
Yes, Taiwan village, Zhongshan, Guangdong, China.
What year?
And October 10, 1929.
Not too far away from my birthday, October 3rd. So we're both Libras.
It's 1010.
Uh-huh. Well, that's also a good time, I guess.
Easy to remember. 10,
Yeah.
10.
So when did you make your way to America?
In November, I arrived in America November 8, 1938.
Okay. You were what they call a paper son.
Yes.
And a paper son was basically someone who claimed to be the child of an American citizen,
Right.
when in fact that wasn't the case.
Right.
And that was because back in the late 1800s and through the 1940s, it was illegal for Chinese
Right.
to immigrate to America.
Right. There's the Chinese Exclusion Act by Congress.
Mm-hmm. So how did you become a paper son?
My father was a paper son. I'm a paper grandson. So he he brought me to America, and two other brothers who came separately. So and I landed in November 8, 1938, with a paper mother.
So to be clear, your father was a paper son.
Right.
When did he come to America?
In 1909,
Okay.
when he was 14.
And so he petitioned for you to come to America.
Right.
And he had two other sons come to America too.
Right.
But they were not your real brothers.
No, they were paper brothers.
Okay. So you actually were a real son of a paper
Real
son.
son of my father, yes.
Okay. And the reason why your father was able to immigrate here was because he claimed to be the son of an American citizen.
That's right. His older brother, number two brother, sponsored him to provide the passage
Okay.
cost.
And was his number two brother, did he base his citizenship claim following the 1906 earthquake?
My paper grandfather, following 1908 earthquake, 05 was
Oh, 06.
06 earthquake. And the grandfather claimed to be a citizen,
Okay.
claimed to be a native.
Okay. So the earthquake basically destroyed all of the city records.
That's right.
And so the grandfather was able...
The government was unable to prove they were not citizens.
Okay.
So they were given citizenship papers.
Okay. So the grandfather reported that he was a citizen. He was given citizenship papers.
His name was Wong Gui.
Okay. And so you had a 1-month journey by ship.
Right.
Do you remember how much that cost, the passage ticket?
About equivalent of $200
Okay.
at that time.
A lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And you came with your paper mother.
Right.
So she wasn't your real mom.
No, she was an aunt.
Okay. And so you came in, do you remember the name of the ship?
SS President Hoover.
Okay. And the first stop on American soil was over at Angel Island.
Right. I stayed about 2 months at Angel Island.
Now, you underwent a couple of tests.
Yes, test for hookworm.
You failed that test.
Had hookworm, so had therapy at the hospital. And there was, remember the nurse with white hair, very pretty, was bathing me in the bathtub.
Uh-huh.
That was a memorable experience, never forget. I remember getting dizzy, playing the swing and the seesaw.
Uh-huh. But
First time.
your time, though, on Angel Island was difficult, right? It was essentially a detention center.
Yes, but I get along with everyone. But even on the ship, on the way to America, I have many friends on first class and second class.
Mm-hmm.
I go up there. I was a very curious child.
Uh-huh.
I went to see the movies,
Uh-huh.
see people swimming,
Uh-huh.
and so forth. And they gave me chewing gum for the first time. I chew it.
And so these passengers that you met on the voyage to America were not Chinese immigrants, right?
Most of them are.
Most of them were.
Yes.
And were they going through Angel Island too?
So there were white people too.
Okay. And so the Chinese passengers that you met, were they also destined to go to Angel Island?
Yes, most of them,
Okay.
except the citizens.
Right. So a lot of the people you met on the ship, you also ran into at Angel Island.
Yes,
So you made some good friends on the ship, and you
Right.
continued the friendship
yes,
at Angel Island. So you had to go through a 2-month process. We talked about one test, the hookworm test that you failed,
yeah.
but the second test you passed. It was the interrogation.
Yes, because I memorized all the letters that my father sent to me to all his answers and questions.
So, and to be clear, what we're talking about is the government by this time had learned that not every Chinese who claimed to be the son of an American citizen was in fact the son of an American citizen. And so they set up Angel Island to screen out
That's right.
paper sons.
If they failed the oral test, they might be deported back.
Do you recall how long the interrogation or those oral tests took you?
About 1 hour.
Okay, and how many tests did you have to go through?
Oh, there was numerous questions like, were your house facing north or south? How many windows? All that stuff. How many steps?
Were you nervous?
As a 9-year-old then, I guess I was a little nervous.
Uh-huh. And did anyone explain to you the significance that if you didn't pass, you would get sent back to China?
Yes, there was an interpreter. Explained to you. So you better answer correctly.
So you eventually passed the test.
That's because I look like my father most.
And you're,
Spitting image of my father.
and you of course were the
Yes.
spitting image. And your paper mother, she also passed the test?
Yes, she passed too.
So both of you were released from Angel Island at the same time?
That's right.
Okay. And then you found,
Then my paper mother went to her husband, to join her husband, and I joined my father for living in San Francisco in the underground, very inexpensive apartment
do you recall where that was?
and on Stockton Street, underground.
Okay.
And I went to school at Gene Parker
Mm-hmm.
for about 6 months. Then my father went back home because we were worried about my mother and sister because the war, Japanese occupation. Actually, the mother and the sister were hiding in San in the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
When he went home to look for them.
So what, do you recall what year it was that your father returned back?
6 months later, in 38 would be somewhere in 39,
Okay.
but May or June. Huh?
So by this time, you're about 10, 11 years old.
Yeah, 10 years old. Yeah.
And who took care of you?
I have an uncle. That's my father's second brother. He had 5 brothers. He was number 5.
And where were you living with your uncle at the time?
Yes, uncle at Ileton and Cortland. First we lived in Cortland. We went to Cortland Grammar School. And then when the house was burned down, there was a fire at around midnight. One night, and people were howling on the street, and my aunt was living with us, and she was jumping up and down. And we had to wake up and escape the fire with barely my pajamas.
Mm-hmm.
No clothes, no shoes, nothing. I had to go shopping next day for all clothes, new clothes.
So you brought some photographs.
Yes.
And over there is a
Cortland High School.
Okay, so that's.
I went to Ileton Grammar School. Graduated 8th grade there, and then to Cortland High School.
So Cortland's essentially a farming town, right?
Right.
When did you?
It's a mostly Chinese population.
Okay. And do you recall?
Water Grove, Ileton, Lock, is the river delta.
Right.
Mostly Chinese in those days, back in the 40s.
And Locke is famous because they have a Chinatown there that's
Right.
still in existence.
Right. There's about 1,000 Chinese living there, families.
Okay. Now, eventually, you worked on a farm yourself.
Right, until I was inducted into the Army in 1951.
Okay. Do you recall which farm you worked on?
The farm is named Johnson Ranch.
Okay.
My cousin, Jeong Hall, it's a tenant farmer there.
And how long did you work on that farm for?
Let's see, 49, I came back from China, and 51 was inducted, so almost 2 years.
And what kind of farm was it?
Mostly pear orchard.
Okay. So you went to China for a little bit.
Yes, in 1948.
And why did you go to China?
My uncle was ready to retire. He sent me over there first to see if the house is finished. New house is building. So he sent me up to go home first. And he followed the following year with his children, family.
So he was smart in building a house in China for his retirement.
I get to live in the new house for a while.
So you got to live there for a little bit?
Yeah, till he came back.
And was your plan to return back to the United States?
Yes, that was about two years later.
Now, why did you want to return to the United States?
Because the communists were advancing to Canton, the big city near Zhongshan where we live, about 100 miles. So I applied for the same ship called General Max. Me and another friend come back to United States. And he lived in a friend named Stephen Lay. And he went back to Sacramento, his father there, I went to my cousin in Hood, California, and worked for him until I was inducted.
You were drafted,
Drafted, yeah.
to the to serve in the Korean War.
In the Korean War.
How old were you at the time?
21, I think.
Where did you train?
In fact, the officer who interview me asked me where I was those 2 years when you were 18. I was in China.
And what was his response?
Okay, let's go get a physical.
So you got drafted, you reported,
Yeah.
you went through training.
Yes.
And where was your training at?
Fort Ord, California, then Monterey. And then after basic training, like the basic training graduation photo.
Okay. So then you were, headed to...
After the parade, we had a parade after graduation. I was sent with the other group to Fort Riley, have more training on psychological warfare.
So you were selected to do what's called PsyOps,
Yes,
psychological operations.
Psychological warfare.
And can you tell us what that generally is? What's PsyOps?
Well, our group is about a platoon size, and the main station is in Tokyo, the broadcast station. Then they have branch stations in Seoul and in Busan. We were sworn not to reveal that unless after 5 years.
So it's okay to know now.
Because we had FBI clearance.
So let me ask you this. You came in as a paper son. Your citizenship status obviously was questionable.
That's true.
Did you have concerns that you would not pass the FBI clearance?
I did not know that they did the clearance without my knowing, of course. They interviewed all my background checks.
And you didn't have a speeding ticket, no arrest, so you were good, you were clear.
Excuse me.
Sure.